If you want an adventure, you could climb a mountain! Or ride dune buggies through the desert! Or you could just head to your neighborhood Zaxby's. Introducing the Smokehouse Cheddar Barbecue and Southwest Chipotle Filet Sandwich Meals. They're brand new and they'll take your taste buds to wild and exciting new places. Both feature our famous hand-breaded chicken, and they're both available for a limited time. Only at your neighborhood Zaxby's. And don't miss Jumanji: The Next Level, only in theaters.
From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up!
Wake up! Wake up!
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
And Corey Clark.
Out in the West Texas town.
Wake up!
What up, everybody? It is Wake Up Warchant presented by Zaxby's. Indescribably good. When I get back to Tallahassee, first thing on the to-do list, get to a Zaxby's, get me some fried chicken. I'm Aslan Hajavandi, usually alongside Corey Clark, but I'm in El Paso, Texas, and I have the pleasure of having Ira Schofel on the program. We've been here since the 26th. We're coming on like 4 days on this?
Feels like maybe even longer, but yeah, it's me because Corey doesn't do bowl trips anymore. He's sworn them off until they get back to a New Year's Six bowl. I think that's his ultimatum.
Line in the sand. So Corey back in Tallahassee, covered the basketball game the other day, which Florida State was victorious in. Was it North Alabama they played? I think.
Correct.
Keep it rolling, Leonard. Keep it rolling. We know you're out there, but yeah, we're in El Paso. They've been treating us really well. We've been eating just inordinate amounts of really good food. I made it to the gym today though, so I don't feel as guilty. You holding up all right, Ira, after the 2-pound steak?
I'm hanging in there. You going to tell people about the steak video that's being dropped on YouTube?
It's on YouTube. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can also see it. We had a little bit of fun. We've been working hard. Ira's been working really hard. We've been cranking out lots of content. If you're not a member of Warchant.com, what are you waiting for? Use the promo code Warchant30 for 30 free days of access to the ultimate Seminole sports source. And we've been at practice. We've interviewed players after practice. We've been at the press conferences. We went to the Army base. We went to the opening night gala at Top Golf, as well as the gift suite they gave away. And I mean, Ira touched down and was shot out to the to UTEP Stadium, and then I touched down and went out to Top Golf. So we've been cranking out a bunch of content. The gift suite was pretty cool, I thought. We didn't know that there was a watch though that was also thrown into the mix there, right?
Yeah, they didn't. That wasn't part of the gift suite. I guess they had like $300 to spend on various items. Yeah. Kind of curious, the selection. I mean, there were some speakers, which you'd expect, some sunglasses, some cool designer things, and then a bunch of like blenders and food processors. I guess it was for send back to mom and dad back home. And then, but yeah, and then on top of that, everybody gets.
It gets better.
Everybody gets a Tony the Tiger watch, which is pretty cool. And yeah, tweeted that picture out last night from the watch designers, I guess makers, whatever, were here at the media room. So I took a picture of the watch, tweeted it out last night, and seems like a lot of people were having fun at the expense of the Tony the Tiger watch. But what are you gonna do?
It's all right.
I'm guessing we're not going to see James Blackman sporting his Tony the Tiger watch in a couple months. Maybe.
We don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll pop up on eBay somewhere.
Yeah, you might find a Tony the Tiger Florida State watch on eBay.
So the gift suite thing, the way it works out is they have this list, and it's like broken up into different tiers, and they get 7 points. And then each sort of product category has a point value. So like the wireless headphones or like Beats headphones are like 4 points. So you get that, then you're pretty much kind of out of your budget. So that was an interesting thing. Taught these kids how to learn, it gets them ready for the draft. And when they get to the next level, they know how to budget their money out. So that was a kind of a cool thing. Otherwise, I mean, the game itself, we'll get to that later, but I guess the real important thing is that there's been a flurry, an absolute flurry of activity, it seems like, Ira, when it comes to Mike Norvell rounding out a staff and just everything with Florida State. I've never seen anything come together this fast. Yeah,
it's really been impressive and really remarkable. And I'm actually writing a column about it that will go up on the website later today. I think a lot of times one of the cliche things you hear from coaches and athletic directors is that whenever they have an opening on their staff, they've got like a notebook in a drawer with names of people that are going to replace if one of the coaches leaves.
A short list.
They've got a short list of who's going to at every position. And sometimes you don't know if you really believe what they're saying or not. But Mike Norvell apparently not only had a list of who he was going to bring in if he got a job like a Florida State job, I think he had kind of tacit agreements with some of these coaches because, within 3 weeks, he was hired 3 weeks ago, He's already got basically his entire staff in place, 9 of the 10 assistant coaches. He's got a chief of staff that he hired away from an NFL team. He's got
strength coach.
He's got some analysts hired that were Division I coaches at other schools that are coming in, leaving Division I on-the-field coaching jobs at smaller schools to be analysts at Florida State, which is something we haven't really seen before. So it's been really cool. And it's clear the guy had a plan, and it's a stark contrast to Willie. And this isn't, again, every story doesn't have to be about bashing Willie and his staff, but it is a stark contrast to 2 years ago when the top assistants Willie targeted didn't come. And then he was kind of scrambling and trying to find other guys. And he ended up hiring some guys that he really didn't know or have relationships with. It really seems like, and from what I was told, really there's only maybe one guy that Mike Norvell really wanted and couldn't get. And I assume it was Silverfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thought Lanning maybe. I thought maybe he wanted Dan Lanning.
I thought
Georgia.
So too, but I was told there's only one that they couldn't get.
Okay.
But it could be semantics.
Right.
But basically one or two. For the most part, he got who he wanted. And, and again, it's impressive that some of these people, for example, I think one of the most impressive ones to me is Chris Thompson, who's offensive line coach at TCU, his alma mater. He leaves there to come be tight ends coach and deputy head coach.
Is that official, the tight ends thing? Or
tight ends, yeah. They
okay.
clarified it. Yeah, he'll be tight ends coach. And, it's just I think it seems to me, and we haven't talked to Mike Norvell about this, but it seems to me that, his pitch to these guys is, look, man, we're going to go there and we're going to kill it, and we're all going to do well. And clearly, if his track record at Memphis, having all those assistant coaches leave, is, he's very much about empowering them and setting them up to succeed, whether that's at Florida State or somewhere else.
Yeah, I think he said it during either signing day when we kind of asked him about it.
I think it might have been signing day. Yeah.
It's just like I tell all these guys, my job is to get you out of here, kind of like I want to get you a head coaching job. Come work for me and then leave and get a head coaching job. So that's obviously a nice way to market things. Corey and I have bounced it back and forth on the program. I want to get your thoughts on it because I know a lot of people are curious about your insight into things. But we heard the coaching chemistry term that Willie kind of threw around, which I think there's some credence to it. And with TJ Rushing being hired, that kind of shows that, obviously T-Buck's not coming home. That's kind of a downer for Corey and myself, a fan of T-Buck. T-Buck, friend of the program. And is there a value into having guys that and work closely with versus like higher profile names, sizzle? I guess, is familiarity a more important thing when you're setting up your staff for the first time than it might be just trying to get the biggest names out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a balancing act. I think I do think it's more important to get guys that you think will do a good job and there will be some chemistry there because you think back to Jimbo's staff when he put that first staff together. He had a relationship with Eddie Gran. Mm-hmm. He had a relationship with James Coley. He had a relationship with several of those guys. Damian Craig came in later, but Dawsey had been with them at LSU. He had relationships with a lot of those guys. One guy he did not have a relationship with was Mark Stoops. They worked well together. I mean, they had success those 2 years, but it wasn't a great relationship. I mean, like they were 3 years, 10, 11, and 12. But there were some moments where they didn't always get along. There were some times we saw him on the practice fields where Jimbo talked to Mark Stoops a couple times like, man, you're talking to your defensive coordinator like that in front of other people. And then when Stoops got the chance to go to Kentucky, he jumped at it, which I think some people thought maybe if he waited a little longer, he could have got a better job. I just didn't think that was I didn't think they got along great. Now, they did have some success. But that's the risk when you hire coaches that you haven't worked with or haven't worked with somebody that worked with them. And they could tell you, oh, no, you guys are going to be a perfect fit. Really, Jimbo sat down with Mark Stoops. They kind of went over some stuff on the grease board, it sounded like, and decided he's the guy. So I think there's risk if you don't have experience together. The positive to it is, you could get a chance to get somebody, maybe for higher profile. But I'm not as bothered by the fact that he brought in some of these Memphis guys because it's not like these Memphis guys are all guys that came up with him from day one. It's not like they were all at Pitt and rose up or wherever he was before that at a small school and kind of rose up along the ranks the way – that was the thing that always bothered me about Willie's staff with those guys who had followed him was that several of them were with him at Western Kentucky, went with him to USF, went with him to Oregon, came to Florida State. And it's just, I've always kind of wondered, what were the odds that you had 4 or 5 or 6 guys at Western Kentucky at the same time who all needed to be at a Florida State, 7, 8 years later or 10 years later. The difference here is these guys had been other places. Adam Fuller, the defensive coordinator at Memphis last year, who's coming in, is not a Mike Norvell protege. I mean, he worked at several other places, worked his way up, worked for some other good coaches, and ended up with him. I think you look at it's not a situation where, and Chris Thompson is a guy he's known forever, but Chris Thompson actually was one of his coaches and has been a variety of different places and has been offensive line coach a variety of different places. The Alex Atkins, who's the new offensive line coach, is not one of his guys. He was at Charlotte last year. He's young for an offensive line coach, but I've talked to some people at Charlotte, and he's apparently a young phenom. He was offensive coordinator and offensive line coach at Charlotte. So it just seems like it's a good combination of guys that bring different experiences, and they're young and hungry. And I think they're all upwardly mobile. I think if that was one other thing that, even Jimbo's staff the last 4 or 5 years, it felt like it was not guys who were upwardly mobile. They won the national title. Then he made a lot of, they had to replace several guys. And it was some guys on the tail ends of their careers, Brad Lying, Bill Miller, some of those guys
Rick Trickett,
guys that weren't really going anywhere. It seems like he's targeted guys who are on the come, which, you could say, hey, Florida State should have guys who have already arrived. But I don't know. I think when you look at the rebuilding effort they may have to do here, bringing some youthful energy and guys who are hungry might be better suited than just guys who have big names.
It just gives me a little bit of pause because it just feels. I mean, your offensive line coaches from a Conference USA school, your D coordinator and secondary coach are both from Memphis. It just, I understand the need to be familiar, and maybe Harlan Barnett's comments that he gave to us the other day kind of maybe give us a little of context, just how important it is to sort of vet a job, make sure you're going to be comfortable at a place. And it sounds like Norvell has the guys that he thinks will be able to fit nicely into what he wants to do. And I kind of joked about this with Corey to a certain extent, but like if you're a Florida State fan at this point, if you're going to wrap your arms around Mike Norvell, I almost think you have to come from like a really almost like irrational confidence standpoint of like, we just did a coup. Like this guy is the next, I'm not saying he's like Saban or anything like that, but this guy is a highly intelligent, really sharp, detail-oriented guy that just knows how to identify talent, whether it's players or coaches, and put something together. And Florida State lucked out by getting him at the price tag they did, and for however long they're going to be able to pay for that price tag at that point is a huge sort of thing, because you really have to believe, and you talk about what's the likelihood that all these guys would have worked at Western Kentucky and then 8 years later they're all ready to be at Florida State. Like, what are the odds that these guys that were at kind of middle tier jobs can hit the ground running at Florida State and be successful day one? It's because Mike Norvell has this sort of eye, and this he's the ultimate marionette guy.
Well, but I think if you looked around college football, I think there's a lot of guys that work their way up from mid-level jobs to Power 5 jobs and have success. I think one thing that a lot of us did, I definitely did, when I looked at the struggles of these last 2 years, was to say, okay, the reason they didn't recruit well, or the reason they haven't been able to recruit against the Clemsons and the Alabamas and all that, was because these guys didn't have Power 5 experience, or they hadn't recruited at this level before. That could be it, or it could be that they just weren't very good and they had a bad product to sell because the team stunk, because it wasn't coached very well and the kids didn't really buy in. So, I think we're making some assumptions based on what went wrong with the previous staff that maybe aren't a reflection of the circumstances, but more a reflection of just that staff. So I think that again, you look at I think we were all impressed by what Dan Mullen's done with his staff and the fact that they were a lot of SEC guys and guys he had coached with before. But again, that's you didn't hire a Power 5 coach. I mean, you didn't hire. So to me, it's like if Mike Norvell at 38 years old comes in and hires a bunch of Sal Sanseris and Eddie Grands and whoever, guys that are in their 40s or 50s that have been coaching in the SEC for 10 or 15 years, there's a lot of risk there too. I mean, are they buying in completely to his vision, or do you have independent contractors, guys who are kind of got their own vision or have their sights set on his job?
Right. I worked with Nick Saban. We didn't do this in Alabama,
So I just think to me, from that standpoint, if you're going to hire a 38-year-old head coach, I think you're suiting up for the idea that you're not going to go hire a bunch of 50-year-old assistant coaches, unless it was a guy who maybe, was a wonderkind and worked for Nick Saban or something like that. But I don't know, man. I could see what you're saying, and it's worth considering. I mean, I definitely don't think people should just blindly assume that all these guys are incredible coaches. But I would say that the fact that his track record in the short time he's been a head coach, the fact that other schools are constantly looking to poach his assistant coaches, I think that says something. And then the fact that some of these guys had other opportunities or were other places, but then chose to come back to work for him again, I think that says a lot as well. And really, two or three of the most impressive ones to me are the Chris Thompson coming to work for him, and the guy from the Rams,
Chuck Warwick.
Is it Chuck or Bruce?
Sorry,
Warwick?
Bruce. I don't know why I said Chuck.
Warwick.
Chuck Walsh, SID, Florida State in my head for some reason.
Coming to be the chief of staff, which is an interesting position. I talked to a couple of people over the last couple of days to try to get a feel for what that is. It sounds like it's an expanded director of operations. They've always had a director of operations position, somebody that handles all the behind the scenes stuff, make sure everything's scheduled, make sure that the trains run on time, so that the football coaches can do their job. The meals are prepared right, hotel arrangements are done, all the logistics, practice, equipment, oversee all that kind of stuff. But it sounds like he's going to actually oversee more people as well as a chief of staff. He's going to have some of these people in other areas of the football program will be reporting to him, and then instead of taking the head coach's time with everything, which I think is a unique approach.
Dude, you just pulled a guy from the NFL, pretty much working the same job. How does that happen?
Exactly.
I looked at his LinkedIn. He has a LinkedIn. Everybody, check it out. And there's no overlap at all with him and Mike Norvell.
Nope. He was at Tennessee for a while. He was at
Syracuse.
Yeah, a few different colleges, and then he's been in the NFL for like 15 years. Yeah. And yeah, I mean it's
Los Angeles.
Yeah,
I love you, Tallahassee, but man, it'd be tough to pry me away from L.A.
Yeah, it's I mean it's hard to not be impressed, and it's also, again, to me, it says something that these are all done so quickly. Not that that's the be-all, end-all. Sometimes being quick can be a not good thing, but it shows that it's not like he's scrambling. Right. And again, with Willie's first staff, it just felt like scrambling. Right. So, we'll see. If he didn't get it right, he didn't get it right. But I think you have to be impressed by how quickly he's done it. And that, and then the things we've heard about some of these guys has been promising. It's not like we've seen a lot of red flags about any of them.
I do need to reach out. I know somebody that would probably be able to give me some sort of anecdotal stuff about Alex Atkins, the offensive line coach, with his background. That's that's a super important hire too. I mean, I think the defensive coordinator hire, obviously, offensive line coach is the biggest. And I really what are they going to do with linebackers? Is Marv, the guy from Mississippi State, is coaching linebackers. So
and then I think Fuller, I assume, will just help with them. Yeah.
So. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the breakdown, but I do wonder. Again, I think I know they have to pay the buyout to Willie, but ultimately this staff is not going to cost them as much as what they were paying the previous staff, I feel like, even with the buyout to Harlan Barnett. And I wonder if that's is going to be able to create the militia of guys in polos and khakis, like the analyst stuff. I mean, if you're pulling guys, I think one of the guys from Marshall, one of the guys – not Chattanooga, but I forgot where one of the other guys was from. But to pull guys from on-field coaching jobs.
There's one in Marshall, one in Memphis. It was a tight ends coach at Memphis who's going to be is an analyst, and then a coach from Marshall is going to be an analyst.
Like, people thought that, Florida State might have not gone all in with Mike Norvell. Well, maybe they're giving him the money to be able to get a chief of staff guy that was working in the NFL and is going to have people working underneath him, and then you're bringing guys from on-field jobs to be analysts for you. So I guess that just kind of shows the belief that people have for him.
Yeah, for sure. And I did talk to David Carburn a little bit about the pool of money, because in Mike Norvell's contract, it spells out he's got $5.25 million to spend on assistant coaches per year, which is a little bit more than Willie had for the assistant coaches. And then there's another separate pool of money for support staff. And that money's not in his contract, but Coburn assured me that they did kind of give him a blueprint, a framework of what he had to work with. But to your point, if they come out under on the $5.25 million, then maybe you can move some of that over to the other side. But it's David Coburn said, that's if your support staff is not good, the way he put it was, it just makes everything more difficult for the on the field coaches. So that chief of staff hire, it sounded, just from talking to David Coburn for a little while, it sounded like he was as excited about that hire as any. And he was excited about several of them. He mentioned defensive coordinator and a couple other guys, but he was really excited about the chief of staff and his background.
Ultimately, this all just boils down to patience, I feel like, which is this is going to be the long play of everything. Is not so much like trusting Norvell's vision, but ultimately what it appears like, and from what you're saying, it's so important to have everybody on the same page, and not guys that are just, he doesn't want yes men. He doesn't want people to think just like he does. He wants like-minded people, but that are going to disagree with him. But yeah, if you're that organized to think this far ahead, to bring these guys in from on-field jobs, bring them in as analysts, and then you have T.J. Rushing worked with Adam Fuller, who worked with Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell's it's his offense. Dillingham's going to help him out. Thompson's a guy that he played under, is going to be able to kind of know what he's thinking about things. Alex Atkins is a guy that has a pretty good track record. Just the familiarity. It just seems like, and to your point too about the upward mobility of this staff, it seems like a lot of these guys, and people always joke about, Bill will only be here for probably 3 years and he'll get a head coaching job. And Kendall Browse will only probably be here for 2 years, then he'll move on to get another coaching job. Those obviously worked out in really funky ways, and they all did move on. But these guys seem like, if this all goes according to plan, this gets rolling quickly, and then these guys, they can move on, and then you can try to replace them again, which is what he did in Memphis all the time.
And what I think those analyst positions, the two guys, the guy that came in from was a secondary coach at Marshall, and the tight ends coach at Memphis, coming in as analysts, you just assume that part of the kind of, hey, come on in here. As other assistants leave, you're going to be first on the list. If you come here as an analyst, you'll be first on the list to be on the field. Oh. Now you go from maybe making $80,000 as an analyst to making $300,000 as an assistant coach. So, you have to be impressed by. I am impressed by the coordination. And one of the things you hear, really anybody you talk to, one of the interesting things to me about Norvell has been, if you talk to recruits' parents, if you talk to players' parents, if you talk to just people in the building in the Moore Athletic Center, everybody just talks about how the first thing everybody talks about is, that guy's got a plan. He really has a plan. And that, to me, that how he conveys that so quickly. We talked to some of the players yesterday who have had their one-on-one meetings. Really, he's met with everybody on the team in these one-on-one meetings, Mike Norvell has. And, I'm sure some of these guys are skeptical. I think one of the players, I don't know if it was Emmett Rice, one of the guys I think you talked to said, look, man, I told him I've been through this 3 times now. So some of these guys are going to be skeptical and wary. I think wary is the word Leonard Warner used when we talked to him last week. They're some of these guys are going to need to see proof that he's the real deal. But so many different people have used the word plan, that he's got a plan. It's impressive that comes across in these quick meetings. Like, I don't know how. I'd love to know how he's conveying that. How do you in a 15-minute conversation with all these different types of people, let them know that you've got a plan, and that they all believe. They all see that.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe part of it is putting the staff together and getting your first sort of pick of the guys that you want, and not swinging and missing. So I think that probably helps things out a lot too. Hey, let's talk about the game and some other roster rumblings and things like that. Right after this.
At Birch Orthodontics, they know what a difference a beautiful and healthy smile can make in your life.
They take the time to get to know you and perform a thorough exam so that they can make an individualized treatment plan just for you or your child.
They use the latest technology in a warm and comfortable environment. So whether you are interested in traditional metal or clear braces or clear aligners, they can give you the smile you deserve. They know investing in your smile means investing in your future. And at Birch Orthodontics, they are honored to be a part of your smile journey.
Serving Tallahassee for 16 years and supporting the Noles since forever. Check them out at birchorthodontics.com. BURCH orthodontics.com. Welcome back. It's Wake Up Warchant. I'm Aslan. Ira Schofel in for Corey Clark. He'll be back tomorrow. talking about the Noles. We're in El Paso. We're going to have the coaches press conference later today. That'll be up on warchant.com. Herm Edwards, Odell Higgins. We're hoping maybe Herm goes first, kind of set the tempo, set the table for Odell to follow him and be like, all right, I can be charming, I can be open, and people will like me. So we'll see if that works out.
I had a pretty quick, funny Corey interaction while we were out here. I was talking to a player's parent, and who's around. The media hotel is right next door to the team hotel. So I feel like I'm telling that to you, even though you obviously know it. I'm telling it to the listeners. But I was talking to one of the players' parents, and he asked where Corey was. And I said, yeah, man, he didn't make it because he didn't fly. And he goes, man, I love watching your guys' videos because, like, every time you start talking and try to explain something that or give a benefit of the doubt or something like that, Corey would just like throw up his hands and like lean his head back, like he just like was so outraged about what he had just seen from this team. And it was just funny to watch him impersonating Corey's reactions after some of the performances we saw this season was pretty funny.
That said, we are here to cover the game, but the roster, that's something else that's kind of coming together while we've been out here. 2 transfers have committed, 1 grad. The other one, I did not read the release on Jay Sean Corbin from Texas A&M.
There's a lot of confusion about that. He's not going to be automatically eligible just because he redshirted last season at Texas A&M. And Jay Sean Corbin, if people have read about it, he committed to Florida State when Jimbo was here. When Jimbo left, he ended up switching and committing to Texas A&M. Played there a good bit as a true freshman. Then earlier this year, he was a starting tailback, got hurt, pulled towards hamstring, was out for the rest of the year. And I think some people are assuming because he ended up redshirting that season that he can come in and play right away. He can. He still has to apply for he is signed. He's coming to Florida State. He'll be here. I think he'll be here maybe in the spring. Yeah. But he'll still have to sit out the 2020 season unless he can get a waiver. Now, I'm guessing the fact that he's from Florida and he went to play in Texas and now he comes back home to Florida, I'm assuming he'll be making some sort of plea and a waiver, had to get back home for whatever reason, and hope that the NCAA will let him play right away. And maybe that'll happen, but it's not guaranteed he can play right away. It would be huge if he could, because they obviously have a big need at running back.
That they do. But the
offensive tackle definitely can.
Yeah. Devontae Taylor, he's from FIU. He went to Mitchell High School, which is like down the road from kind of where I grew up. They call it Odessa, but it's like actually really Trinity, which is like some wannabe suburb of Eastlake.
Trinity is an area?
Yeah. I'm from Eastlake. Trinity's like the Pasco County version of us. They're like they're the off-brand Eastlake. They try, though.
Give them credit for that.
Yeah. But Devontae Taylor, 6'4", 305-pound offensive lineman from FIU. He was a Conference USA honorable mention. Played and started in all 13 games this past season. He graded out at 74.2 according to Pro Football Focus. Again, it's FIU. They're not playing a Power 5 schedule. I did notice that the highest graded game that he had overall was against Miami, which was a Power 5 team on their schedule. And to put that in comparison and maybe some context for everybody, 74.2 is offensive grade in Pro Football Focus. The highest graded offensive lineman for Florida State was Dante Lucas at 61.7. So they need a tackle. They got a tackle. They need a running back. They got a running back. Maybe this also just kind of speaks again, I think, to Mike Norvell's plan just to realize things and get on it sooner rather than later. I think people get upset about this, and maybe you can either talk me out of it or maybe help me out with this. I see so many comments on YouTube where people are like, they're still talking about Willie. Like, it's been 8 weeks, move on. Yeah. And it's just, how? I mean,
it's the same thing. It's
you?
Well, it's the same thing we went through with Jimbo. Like, people are like, why does everything have to be a referendum on Jimbo? Why do you have to keep comparing everything to Jimbo? Because early on when everybody was, the players love Willie and they're dancing to practice and everybody's happy and it's not Jimbo's not yelling at them and it's just you compare to what you most recently had. I mean, I just think that's natural, but I also think it's something tangible because if you don't compare it to that, what's the frame of reference? So I think
what is it going to do? What's going to be better?
Yeah, why is it going to be different?
Yeah, you're comparing it to what it used to be. I don't want to say a pass. But there was no scrutiny to the fact that they went through the 2018 spring, him and Greg Frye, and it's not just Willie, and they're like, all right, we'll be all right. Like, they didn't try. I mean, maybe they did, but we really weren't aware of any sort of plays they made for junior college offensive linemen. And they're not, you swing and miss a lot more than you hit when it comes to junior college transfers, especially offensive linemen, linebackers for Florida State for sure. But this quickly to identify a guy that's eligible, that can come, and to get him, and who knows, man, maybe he's your Ryan Roberts, maybe he's a little bit better than Ryan Roberts. Just the fact that you're trying to get better actively this quickly with so many different things going on, putting the staff together, recruiting, moving your family, saying goodbye to Memphis, all these things, the fact you're able to kind of have all these irons on the fire, juggle all these things, and seem to pick up some pretty good pieces. Jayshawn Corbin's a really good football player.
He is.
He's a really good football player. And when you add on to the fact that they really need a running back, it's just that much more encouraging to see these things being put together.
On the heels of keeping the class intact for the most part, which was impressive. Impressive is my word of the day. But yeah, I mean, I think that when when he took over, you just didn't know. I actually, going back a month, 6 weeks ago, and the fact that they weren't losing that many commitments, Odell did a really good job from the time that Willie got fired till the time Mike Norvell got hired. Odell did a great job of keeping that class together for the most part. And I know you guys have talked about it, and I agree with you. It's not going to go down as one of the best classes of all time. But it's guys that were committed that you had a chance to keep or lose, and they were able to keep most of them. And then, but I always thought if Odell didn't get the job, I thought it might crater at that point. That maybe those guys were holding on to the class because they were hoping that Odell would get the job, and if he didn't, they would bounce. But Norvell came in, and they ended up keeping most of them. I think a lot of that credit goes to Odell, but Norvell was able to do that, so he kept that class for the most part intact. Added 2 quarterbacks, and again, we don't know that.
And one of them, sorry to interrupt you, Tate Rodemaker is invited to the U.S. Army All-American game. That's a big accolade.
Yeah, and then the Purdy kid from Arizona. Again, it's like somebody made the comment to me the other day: "Is it that big of a deal? You flipped a quarterback from Louisville?" Well, I think it is, especially when the guy's been committed that long and really hadn't even been interested in Florida State for more like a week. Yeah. Now, there's no guarantee either of those guys pans out. But again, like you said, at least you're giving yourself some opportunities, some options. That was kind of the complaint I think a lot of us had about Willie not signing a quarterback or not bringing in some junior college offensive linemen was, you're stuck with what you've got. And, I remember when Greg Fry came in and we saw Juwan Williams practicing left tackle every day. Then Randy Clements comes in and we see Juwan Williams practicing left tackle every day. And it's like,
how is this supposed to change?
What's going to be different? So, at least it seems like he's addressing those needs. My guess is at running back, I think those 2 positions are going to continue to be the main emphasis for the next signing period. I think they're probably going to sign another couple running backs, maybe a junior college running back, another high school running back, and then as many offensive tackles as they can find.
Wouldn't hurt to maybe get some cornerbacks too. Stanford Sam was the 3rd declared while we were out here, and that was a name that we would talk about. Corey would obviously talk about. Marvin's going to probably leave, Cam's probably going to leave, Tamorin's a guy that might leave, and I always kind of wonder, I'm like, what do you think Stanford Sam was the 3rd will leave? And he's like, well, like what for? And I'm like, well, you're a 5-star kid. You probably, there's something that I think they probably said when you step foot on campus and you think you're going to go 3 in pro, like you're going to go 3 in pro.
That's what Tavares McFadden did and some other guys, yeah.
It's hard to sort of shake yourself out. I guess like Levante Taylor, he probably didn't get injured last year. Who knows? Maybe he would have left early too. I was surprised by it. When we spoke to Harlan Barnett, he said that, at a place like Florida State, you're not surprised by that. But that's another obviously huge position that's kind of underperformed, and they lose, I guess, one of their top performers or at least one of their more sort of seasoned guys. So, what was your kind of impression when you found out that he was declaring?
Yeah, I wasn't totally shocked because of the reasons you mentioned. Yeah, I just knew he was a guy that probably came in thinking 3 years. And I think, also his measurables. He's obviously got great size for corner. And I give, I'll not a pass, but I don't blame these players necessarily for not having a great feeling about Florida State. These guys who have been here for the last 3 years. Stanford signed with Jimbo. In Stanford, when he came out of high school, the other schools really recruiting him were Alabama, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart at Georgia. Those are the schools he had choices to choose from, and those schools really wanted him. But he grew up a Florida State fan because his dad played here, and he ended up coming to Florida State. Well, then Jimbo bails, and then you You get Willie Taggart and the Harlan Barnett. The defense stinks, and you don't have a pass rush. So you're playing corner without a pass rush, and you're playing in a scheme that's not very good, and it's apparently not being taught very well. And so, you finish with that, and it may have been in his mind for 2 months now, man, I got to get out of here. Like as soon as – and I think it was probably the mindset of several guys. And then, the coaching change happens, and now you have a decision to make. Okay, do I want to start over again, or do I just want to go ahead and go follow through with the plan I had anyway? I don't know where Stanford Samuels gets drafted. I mean, from a production standpoint, I can't imagine he's first couple rounds, but maybe he's a mid-round guy based on his athleticism, his size. There's a chance it could be a real bad decision for him. I mean, there's definitely a chance. It's risky. There's definitely a chance, especially if he doesn't have a ton of. I don't think he's got a ton of great tape. I mean, he's played a lot, but it's not like he's been an impactful player. And then and I think that there's been times he's looked physical against the run, and times he's not looked physical at all. And then so pretty inconsistent. And then if he goes there and doesn't perform well in those drills, I mean, it could be a disaster decision for him. But again, I don't want to blame any of these guys for any decisions they make right now. I think we may see more guys jump in the transfer portal after January. I don't think just because we've only seen a couple of those guys do it so far, doesn't mean that we're out of the water in that area. I wouldn't be surprised at all if after the start of the new semester, you see some guys jump in the transfer portal. And again, I wouldn't blame anybody because they've been through the ringer in these 3 years.
On to the game. Well, again, we'll speak to Herm Edwards and Odell later today. The interviews and the press conferences will be up on warchant.com. For all the upheaval and the turnover that Florida State's dealing with, Arizona State's not too far behind. I guess maybe we're too close.
Actually, they may have. When you look at all the coaches, I mean, he fired a bunch of coaches. The defensive coordinator got another job.
Yeah. I didn't even realize. Yeah, Rob Likens, who was his offensive coordinator this year, I know they got rid of their receivers coach, but I didn't realize their OC was also part of the purge. So they're not going to have their regular. They don't have their OC, and they don't have their regular defensive coordinator. They don't have their leading wide receiver Ayuk, and they don't have their leading running back, Benjamin. I mean, how is Florida State in a worse situation than Arizona State?
They're not.
They were just too close to it, right?
I think it's the only thing I would say is you'd assume that Arizona State, because of where they are in terms of the program, in terms of Herm Edwards kind of, rebuilding it, kind of getting some excitement. They ended the year pretty strong when they had the win over Oregon. I think that there's a feeling that they've got more invested in the short term for the program because, their head coach is staying and they had some success late in the year, and they've got a young freshman quarterback that I think everybody's excited about. And that you look at Florida State and you say there's a lot of guys on that team that may not be thrilled about the situation. Right. Their coach just got fired, the head coach. 8 of the assistant coaches are going to be leaving. Some of these players may be leaving. So that would be, to me, that's why I understand why Florida State fans and media, really observers, would look at Florida State and say, this isn't a good spot. And then maybe Arizona State at least will have some of those intangibles in their favor. But, yeah, there's no doubt, man. They lost their 1,000-yard rusher and their best player on a receiver. You already have a true freshman quarterback. Now he's a really talented kid, but he's also benefited from having 2 great weapons around him that he no longer has. So, yeah, I mean, if you were an Arizona State fan, I think you'd be probably as concerned as Florida State fans are.
Yeah, I think some people might classify, there's not a lot of juice to this game. I still think if you're a Florida State fan and you turn on your TV on New Year's Eve, 2:00 Eastern time, and you watch the Sun Bowl on CBS, like you want your team to win, no matter whenever they're playing. There's not a lot of carryover, I think, from what this game's going to be and what the future is. But is there anything to be said about how they perform on the 31st? What that means, or just show something? I mean, I know like Corey and Jeff and Gene, when they were doing the Warchant report, were just kind of joking about the how important this game is, how unimportant the game is. I think there's just something to be said about if we see them come out and play hard. I mean, that's such a low bar, I guess, but I don't know where I'm at when it comes to this game. I want to see them perform well and play hard, but I've seen them practice the last few times for the bowl prep, and it doesn't seem like a team that's really totally dialed in. I don't think they're mailing it in, but it's just they've been through so much.
I thought Odell's comment the other day was probably pretty enlightening when I don't know if you asked him. You might have been you. Somebody asked him about what was Norvell's message to him in preparing the team for the bowl game, and he said he basically just told us to have a good time, go have fun out there.
Yeah.
And really, I think that's probably the right approach. I don't know. I don't know how much this game. It feels different to me than 2 years ago. I don't know why. I'm curious your thoughts. Like what? It feels very different than 2 years ago. Like 2 years ago when they went to Shreveport with Odell, it felt like that game. I guess you still had the streak of non-losing seasons, so that's probably why it felt more important. And now with that gone, you take that away. That's part of it. I think the fact that, honestly, I think part of the fact that it's so far away, like it's almost like it feels like because of the location, it's almost disconnected from the fan base a little bit. Yeah. There's not going to be that many Florida State fans there. So I don't know. It feels very different to me. It feels to me very much like a conclusion of 2019 than it does the beginning of something new. Whereas I kind of felt like 2 years ago, a little bit felt like something new because Willie, there was so much excitement about Willie, and the players were excited about Willie, and just the circumstances were so different. This time, the players are saying the right things, and the players seem to like Mike Norvell, but it doesn't seem to be, and it's probably because of circumstances of how Jimbo left versus Willie was fired. But it doesn't seem like there's this overjoyed exuberance about Mike Norvell coming in. So I think that's part of it too.
That's a really good call. Yeah, I mean there was a weird sort of like synergy of just enthusiasm around Odell. Like one in Odell, let's see if we can get two in Odell, and then the overwhelming enthusiasm with Willie Taggart. And I think there's a cautious because I think everyone was so optimistic about Willie that they feel burnt, that there's not that same sort of bubbling undertone that Mike Norvell gets to enjoy, and then by virtue of this team while they're playing this bowl. But Corey's talked about it all the time about how this is a program that doesn't win anymore. They need to learn how to win. Well, this would be a good sort of feather in the cap to start kind of relearning how to do that. We'll see how it all goes out. I hope for the best, man. One last thing I want to kind of ask you about, maybe kind of doubles back to Mike Norvell and the plan or the sort of assumption and the feeling that he does have a plan. We've heard he's put some stuff in place, minor stuff, but I'm a big fan of the whole no earrings, no hat on when you walk into the football building. I mean, 3rd and 10. People are like, how's it going to help you convert on 3rd and 10? It's the little things. I think that's what culture really is. It's the way you do little things every single day. And when you set the sort of you set the agenda to have that kind of mindset when you're walking into that building every single day, I think is a good thing for this program that didn't have a lot of direction. I mean, I don't want to say discipline. I mean, guys really weren't getting in trouble off the field. The guys, APRs got increased. So, but it's just the proper direction to kind of keep going. And then the whole fact that he's made time to have these one-on-one interviews with everybody, and you kind of joked about when we were doing the stand-up about, Harlan trying to kind of walk the fine line of talking about what it's been like in Tallahassee. You don't want to, talk bad about your employer when you're trying to get another job. You've interviewed people. When people keep complaining about their previous job, it's not a good look. I do think there's value in him having these one-on-ones with these guys and talking to them about like who you are, but getting a feeling from them, from Kendall, from Harlan. I'm assuming Harlan, but we know Kendall. The players have told us like he's sitting down with these guys and he wants to know kind of what their thoughts were of like what the last 2 years have been like, and like how can you fix things if you. There's a certain value, I guess, of like I want to create my own impressions of people. I don't want any sort of secondhand knowledge to frame my opinion of somebody. I want to learn about myself. Man, when you're trying to turn around an entire football program at a university, like you need as much information as possible to help turn things around? Yeah, I definitely think so. And I also think it's good to get it from different perspectives. Yeah. Not just from the athletic department or not just from your colleagues or the coaches who, in Odell. I'm sure Odell's got a good handle on it, but he's going to see things a little bit differently than these players do. I also think it's really cool that he talked to the walk-ons. It's not just in the seniors. You'd expect him to talk to DJ Matthewses and the Tamarian Terrys and
and those guys, but he's talking to walk-on special teams guys. He's talking to seniors who are leaving to get their perspectives. And so, yeah, the idea to digest all that to kind of help shape what he's going to do, I think is smart. I also think, but to your point about, some of the little things in terms of how you handle yourselves, they do matter. I mean, I thought, Jimbo, one of the things, he did, I can't remember if Coach Bowden did it or not. But, wearing suits when they traveled, I think Jimbo brought that in. They may have done it before. I can't remember, but wearing suits when they traveled, it was always impressive. It was impressive. If you were on the road and you went to the team hotel when Florida State arrived, they're all dressed in suits. And it's just, you feel, you and I, if you wear a suit, yeah, man, you just feel different. You're
look
carrying,
good, play good,
and
play good, live good, eat good, die good, whatever Deion said.
And if people see you, you carry yourself a certain way because, and so, and then, under Willie, they kind of went back to not doing that. And then, I think Mike Norvell's going to switch it back. But the other thing about it in these conversations, from what I was told, is he's also making it clear, like he did in the first meeting he had with them, is that, look, this is going to be, we're going to do this together. It's not my way or the highway. But if you do want to be a part of this, man, the standard's going to be really high. He mentioned it at the signing day press conference. He said that, he's told the players that this is going to be the hardest thing they've ever done. And, again, I was talking to somebody the other day about how that adjustment's going to be for some of these players, because they're going to go from a program that was not as strong. Really, this Florida State football program has been as strong as it needs to be in terms of accountability and discipline, really going back to 3 or 4 years till the end of Jimbo's tenure, because they had lost their way. And how big of an adjustment that's going to be, and whether or not these kids will buy in. And the two things I would say is, one, they see what the other way got them. You'd have to believe all these guys want to win, and all these guys want to go play in the NFL. They want to be what their recruiting rankings said they were, and they saw what the other approach got them. So you would think they'll be open-minded to it and open-armed to it. The other thing is, it's kind of cliche, this, people want discipline or people want to be pushed. I mean, there's a reason when you go to like the gym and people are paying these trainers to push them. Like, you're paying somebody to make you work hard. Why? Because you want those results. You want to look like the people that the other people in the gym that they work with. So it's the same thing with football players. I mean, they want to be pushed because they want to go play in the NFL. They want to win games and have success and play in the NFL. So I do think immediately there might be some pushback. I mean, there might be some guys on this team who, when Mike Norvell, because really Norvell's been there for 3 weeks, but he hasn't actually taken over the day-to-day really program. But when they get back from the Sun Bowl, it is going to be a new era. I mean, it's going to be a new regime. And from what I've heard, some of these assistant coaches they brought in, this Chris Thompson, and some of these guys are no nonsense.
Scary.
Yeah,
I like them already.
They're Adam Fuller. I mean, these are no nonsense guys, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a culture shock for some of the players. And you may see some attrition or hurt feelings early on, but you'd have to believe that they'll welcome it. Wouldn't you think? I mean, after getting your brains beat in by Clemson and Florida and Miami and everybody.
I like what you said about, like, you saw what the other way got you.
I mean,
you got your way, and I don't want to say it that way, but you saw what, a lack of a clear, coherent vision with everybody pulling in the right direction and every sort of detail having an eyeball on and every stone being overturned. Like, the opposite of that was going on. And now you see that, and you'll embrace it. And, I remember hearing this. I always would tell people, like, I heard this quote one time, and it kind of resonated with me. And I tell people that, and they kind of look at me like, well, it doesn't resonate with me. It's just that, people don't mind, like in the workplace, people don't mind being told what to do, as long as the person who's telling them what to do knows what they're doing.
Oh, 100%.
So, I think there has to be a feeling, I think, with Norvell trying to establish a relationship with these guys so quickly, and with the one-on-ones, and just, him bringing in these guys so quickly and getting in transfers at positions of need, and just the way the direction he's moving in just lets them know, all right, well, he has an idea of what he wants to do. I'll give him the opportunity to earn my trust.
And I think that, how these assistant coaches come in, how they operate and how good they are at their jobs is going to determine to a degree how the players view Norvell, because I think that was one of the things that hurt Willie.
Really good point.
Was because you had some of these assistant coaches that I just weren't quite frankly, weren't Florida State quality, and the players could see that because they went straight from a previous coaching staff with, Jimbo and some coaches who had coached at a really high level. And so then now they start looking at Willie like, man, you brought these guys in here? Yeah. And so it eroded his credibility. And I think that, again, that's where Norvell – now, if he can do, to me, like the sweet spot of coaching, like the great coaches are, is they can be demanding, but that like we're Mickey Andrews. You can be so demanding that there are times that the players want to hate you, but at the end of the day, they know how much you love them and how it's just for them, that they appreciate it. If you can get to that sweet spot, and I think Willie clearly didn't find it, and I think Jimbo lost it. I think maybe at one point he had it early on in those first few years. I mean, I think the players, the LaMarcus Joyners and those guys really bought in, and certainly the 2013 team. But towards the end, I think he lost it. If you can find that sweet spot between pushing, but then also those guys knowing you're doing it for them. You're not trying to cash in from them. You're not just trying to use them for your benefit. So if he can do that, I mean, that's going to be huge. I mean, it seems like those are some of the it seems like those are the qualities he has. It seems like that's kind of what he's pursuing. We'll have to see if he can pull it off.
All right. You should come back tomorrow. We come back tomorrow, hang out for a little bit.
If Corey's not too busy back in Tallahassee,
we'll do
we can do
a
half and a half or something.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch. I can't wait to see the worldwide release of our my steak eating video. That's really what I'm excited about. I want to see what the critics have to say, how it does on Rotten Tomatoes.
Check it out on YouTube as well as Warchant.com. Use the promo code Warchant30 if you're not already a member. Gets you 30 free days of access. He's Irish O'Fell, our managing editor. I'm Mazon Giovanni. Thanks for listening to Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's.
Warchant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. Warchant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WARCHANT30. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.